lot to talk about right now on Eagles Now. I'm Chase Sr., and after the Philadelphia Eagles got embarrassed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round, final score 32-9, there are a lot of questions for this organization moving forward and how quickly things can change in the National Football League. Less than a calendar year ago, the Eagles were in Arizona. I was there covering the Super Bowl, and they should have won that game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And here we are in the middle of January, and are there going to be wholesale changes for this team? Is Jason Kelce going to retire? What is the future of Nick Sirianni, Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, as well as Brandon Graham? And could this team change drastically going into the 2024 season? We're talking about it, and we're going to continue to cover this team every single day, so please make sure you subscribe. During our watch party, we surpassed 70,000 subscribers. The most pressing question, is there going to be a change at head coach, and is Nick Sirianni going to get fired? I've defended Nick Sirianni. I have said time and time again that I don't think that he is worthy of getting fired, but with how the Eagles ended the season, and how miserable Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie looked with the amount of talent on this roster and how the Eagles just collapsed down the stretch. Is Sirianni going to be able to save his job? Jeffrey Lurie in the box looked as miserable, disgruntled, as unhappy as I have ever seen him. He looked as though he was a man who knew that he was going to have to whack somebody as part of the mob. And then there was a video of him walking to the Eagles locker room where it didn't look as though he was messing around. It looked like he was facing a decision that was a very difficult one to make. To fire a head coach, potentially, who has led you to the playoffs in 3 consecutive years in his first 3 seasons and has a tremendous win-loss record. But the Eagles lose 6 of 7 to end the season. And they get beat up, punched in the jaw, and dominated by a Bucs team that was inferior. And in week 18, it looked as though the Eagles gave up. They had no pulse. And then the effort in this game against the Buccaneers was simply not good enough. And it looks like the players are not responding to Nick Sirianni. They don't trust this entire coaching staff, and we'll talk about Brian Johnson, Matt Patricia, and Sean Desai coming up, and the message clearly not getting through. And I've talked about this a lot, that the Eagles have looked like a team that looks exhausted, that looks tired, that looks miserable. The Super Bowl run and the heartbreak of that game, and then going through that gauntlet of the schedule, it wore this team down, and they just lacked juice down the stretch. So more thoughts on Sirianni coming up, but should the Eagles fire Nick Sirianni? This is the poll question for our show. Y for yes, N for no. This will also be the pinned comment on the video, so go on down and get your votes in. Eagles end the year losing 6 of 7. Season's over. They started the season 10-1, but with how they won some of those close games, they were really never as good in hindsight as what that record indicated. This wasn't really a regression for Philadelphia. This was just a complete collapse from this football team. And you're looking at Sirianni right now as a head coach, and you have to ask this question. What does he do at an elite level? Gets along with players very well. He built a really good culture, but now that culture seems to be fractured. He called plays initially, but had to give up play calling duties to Shane Steichen. And look, having first-year coordinators with Brian Johnson, who's just not cut out for the job and not ready to be a play caller in this league, and having Sean Desai, that proved to be a larger and bigger challenge than what we anticipated. And if Sirianni is able to make quality hires at OC and DC, can this Eagles team come back? Potentially, for sure. But if the players just tune Sirianni out, because of how he carries himself, his personality, which can wear on people. It's great when you're winning. Doesn't work when you lose. And again, I circle back to just the look of Jeffrey Lurie. Looked like an owner who knew he needed to make a change. The season started with the hope that you had your quarterback of the future, your head coach for the future, and maybe you were going to have a repeat of Donovan McNabb and Andy Reid where they were together for so long and you were able to have that sustained success, which is really hard to find at the NFL level. But now, though, losing 6 of 7, losing 32-9 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not having an answer for the blitz, going 0 for on 3rd and 4th down, making some weird decisions in game, a complete and utter total collapse. Everything's on the table, and big changes could be made over the next 24, 48, 72 hours. The Eagles in this game, 0 of 9 on 3rd down, 0 of 2 on 4th down. Jalen Hurts took a safety, 4 points taken off the board, too many missed tackles. And that's an effort thing. That's a coaching thing. And I also think about what Javon Hargrave said. Eagles practices, light, fun, easy. Golden State Warriors. San Francisco 49ers practices, that's the Miami Heat. We think about the Eagles as like having that Heat culture, right? Tapping into the identity of this city. Eagles looked and played like a soft team, and they looked like a team that was ill-prepared. And Sirianni's specialty, offensive side of the football. It's not a good look when you have no creativity, no answers for the blitz, you don't utilize pre-snap motion. Some players told Sal Paolantonio it's a high school offense. And this Eagles offense has looked like a high school offense. It's so predictable where the defense knows what's coming. And what we saw in this game, veteran, savvy, aggressive defensive mind in Todd Bowles just owning Nick Sirianni as well as Brian Johnson. And I think the look in the face of Jeffrey Lurie really did tell a story. He's thinking in his mind, it might be time for a new head coach. Now, we have so much still to get to, so continue to hang out with us. This is your therapy session here on Eagles Now. But if you want to eat good, feel good, and save money, that's a trifecta right there. Make sure you do it with Factor Meals. Get 50% off using the code EaglesChat50. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. Everything is shipped right to your door. And these are chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to go. Skip the grocery stores. Skip the meal prepping. Skip the cleaning up, all the chopping and cutting. With Factor, all you have to do, put them in the microwave, and you're ready to eat. And eat good. And the 50% off using the code EaglesChat50, it's tough to beat. You get protein options. You get veggie options. You get options for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. From smoothies to snacks to full meals. So pick your pre-made meals, prepped and cooked to perfection. You heat them up and enjoy them. FactorMeals.com/EaglesChat50. So those are some thoughts on Nick Sirianni. I would bring him back. I'd give him another year. And I would have him hire a new OC and a new DC. The problem with that, if Nick Sirianni's not going to call plays and you get that hot shot coordinator like he did with Steichen, who did a heck of a job with the Indianapolis Colts, you then circle back to the situation once again where you're having to find a play caller. And I thought that Troy Aikman put it very, very well. Play calling is like an art. And I like Brian Johnson. I like his path as a coach. I thought it was a good move for the Eagles to elevate him. They wanted familiarity with this offense. He's known Jalen Hurts since he was 4. Helped develop Jalen Hurts as his quarterback's coach. And the development of Hurts up until this year was really, really special. And at moments this year, Hurts played pretty well. But as an offensive play caller, Brian Johnson is not cut out for the job. And he's not ready to be a head coach. And he's not ready to be a play caller in this league. I understand it's Nick Sirianni's offense. But the play calling was just malpractice. Back in week 3, the Philadelphia Eagles ran the ball 40 times for 201 yards. That should have been a part of the game plan. You're without A.J. Brown. Julio Jones goes out with a concussion. And the Eagles ran it 15 times for 42 yards, 2.8 yards per carry. They didn't even give DeAndre Swift a chance to catch a groove, to catch fire. Swift only carried it 10 times for 34 yards. And all year, a really gifted back, probably the most gifted back that this Eagles organization has had since LaShawn McCoy, only ran it 20 or more times twice all season in 16 games played. Just can't happen. So if I'm Nick Sirianni and if he comes back, or if Nick Sirianni doesn't come back, it doesn't even matter. You got to move on from Brian Johnson. He's not the guy. And I know that continuity is really important. It doesn't matter. Brian Johnson is not cut out for the job. And then if Sirianni does come back, you got to be looking for a new defensive coordinator. Matt Patricia, Sean Desai, see ya. Sean Desai was made out to be a scapegoat. Unfairly for sure. Made out to be a scapegoat. But even going up against some really good offensive minds, Mike McCarthy, Joe Brady, Kyle Shanahan, Sean Desai's defense weren't cutting it. And you need to start anew at defensive coordinator as well if Sirianni comes back. What I would do, G.J. Kinney is offensive coordinator, current head coach at Texas State, former practice squad quarterback for the Eagles. Offense humming with Texas State and Incarnate Ward. And I would hire Jesse Minter, Michigan defensive coordinator, to take over the defensive side of the ball. Runs the same style of defense that Mike McDonald is running, who used to be Michigan's defensive coordinator before Jesse Minter, now at the Ravens as their DC, number one defense in the NFL. So if Sirianni comes back, you got to bring fresh ideas and fresh perspectives to the table if you're Sirianni. And obviously, if a new head coach comes in, they're going to hire their own coordinators. If you do move on from Nick Sirianni, Jim Harbaugh's still out there, I'm giving him $10 million a year. And then he brings some high-level assistants with him. He brings Jesse Minter with him to be the DC. Harbaugh's offenses have always worked at the NFL level. His defenses have always worked at the NFL level. And he's won everywhere he's gone. And that's the guy who maximizes coaches, maximizes players, and he wins big. I'm hiring Jim Harbaugh, and I'm giving him a blank check. Fuck $10 million, giving him a blank check. Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, always very aggressive. I'm getting aggressive. If you move on from Sirianni, I'm going Jim Harbaugh. Other candidates I like, Bobby Slowick, Texans offensive coordinator. That offense has been unbelievable. C.J. Stroud is a rookie. Ben Johnson, if you want to give him a lot of money. Current OC for the Detroit Lions. Next story here, what is the future of some key members of this Eagles organization? Is Jason Kelce going to retire? Jason Kelce was crying on the sideline. He walked off the field very sad. And when you examine his body language, he looked like a guy who might be done. And if Jason Kelce is indeed done, thank you, legend, for being a leader, for being the epitome of what an Eagles player should be, of being an icon in this city and a role model, and just being an example of what a Philadelphia Eagle is. Passion, intensity, high level of play, caring, fully tapping in to the backbone and the fabric of this city, drinking beers and shotgunning beers at the OD&C aisle. Goes down as probably the best center of all time. And what a run for him. Drafted in the 6th round, 2011. 191 overall out of Cincinnati. Helped win the franchise's only Lombardi trophy. 6-time first-team All-Pro. 7-time Pro Bowler. Just a great, great player and person who is everything that you wanted in a leader. And when you buy jerseys, it's always sexy to get the quarterback or the wide receiver, the running back. I was rocking the Brian Dawkins jersey during the watch party. If you want to get an Eagles legend jersey that has forever value, you get a Jason Kelce jersey, number 62. And when have you said that about an offensive lineman? That's how special Kelce is. Is he going to retire? It's tough to imagine he walks away still playing at this high of a level with the Eagles just completely falling apart. But look, body's old, He's probably beat up mentally and emotionally. Does he have anything to give to the game? Podcast is at its height. Does he want to come back and give it one more run at the Super Bowl? Because the sour taste in his mouth of how the season ended. He's accomplished everything that he's needed to accomplish. 6-time first-team All-Pro and a Super Bowl champion. And a run that spanned from 2011 through 2024. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, other all-time Eagles greats. Fletcher Cox, one of the best defensive tackles in the history of this organization. And then Brandon Graham, one of the finer players and leaders that this organization has ever seen. Number 62, number 55, and number 91. We might not see them in the midnight green ever again. And it's very rare that you can have those three players and Lane Johnson be with one team as captains, as leaders, as high-level players for more than a decade. May be it for all those players. And unfortunately, it ends with just a terrible loss against the Buccaneers. You also look at the Eagles' key free agents this offseason. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, DeAndre Swift, Quez Watkins, Sua Opeta, Nicholas Morrow, Zach Cunningham, Shaq Leonard, Bradley Roby, Olamide Zaccheaus, Boston Scott, Marcus Mariota, Julio Jones, Jack Driscoll, Rashad Penny, Braden Mann. The good news is that if the Eagles can figure it out coaching-wise, they still have elite players on this roster. And a lot of the key players on this team are still young. And the NFL, things can change very drastically in a calendar year. Look no further than this football team and this organization right now, right? And they could still be Super Bowl contenders next year. And you look at that list, they're not losing outside of Kelsey maybe, Cox, Brandon Graham, DeAndre Swift, pivotal members of this football team. They still have the key components. But Howie Roseman, you got to do a better job, man. You got to value linebacker. You got to value safety. The Eagles were bottom 2 or bottom 3 in linebacker and safety spending. You have decisions to make at cornerback. James Bradbury, you can't pack up your bags fast enough. Not only can you not cover, you can't even tackle. So you got to figure out corner. You got to figure out linebacker. You got to figure out safety. It was a down year for this defensive line. You're hoping that with the better defensive mind, maximizes that unit, and they start to get to the quarterback a little bit better. 4 sacks to Baker Mayfield in this game. Showed a pulse, showed some signs of life. But either way, the next 24, 48, 72 hours going to be fascinating. And this entire offseason for the Eagles, going to be fascinating. And we're going to cover it every single day, every step of the way, right here on Eagles Now. So like this video if you love the Eagles. Make sure you subscribe. Thanks for tuning in all year long. But again, our coverage does not stop. Producer Chip did a great job here on Eagles Now all year. I'm Chase Sr., and we hope that all of you continue to rock with us. Eagle season comes to a close. Big questions lingering around this team, and we'll have some answers pretty damn soon.